All episodes of A Trial by Podcast are for informational and entertainment purposes only. Much to their parents' dismay, neither host is a lawyer, journalist, or investigator. Just two people with microphones and Wi-Fi. All actions discussed are alleged, and all parties are innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. For the full legal mumbo-jumbo, check the show notes.
Brazil has a word for the kind of person that Flordelis dos Santos de Souza appeared to be, milagre, a miracle. Born into poverty in one of Rio de Janeiro's most dangerous favelas, she clawed her way out, not through luck or privilege, but through her faith in God. And she made it her mission to bring as many people with her as she could on her way up. By 2019, she was a celebrated gospel singer, a renowned evangelical pastor, a sitting member of Brazil's Congress, and the mother to 55 adopted children alongside her own biological children. She was proof that God was real and that he showed up for the forgotten, and he showed up for those selfless enough to help others. She was, by every measure that mattered in evangelical Brazil, a living saint. But on the morning of June 16th, 2019, her husband was found shot 18 times in the groin. And the story that Flordelis told about what happened that night would begin to unravel almost immediately, because the miracle, it turned out, had a very dark foundation. And the saint, well, she was anything but. This is the story of the murder of Anderson do Carmo. Welcome back to the pod, everybody. I am your host, Kelsey.
And I'm Alex.
And Alex is back. If you guys listen to the Jean-Claude Romand episodes, Alex was the guest host there. And I know you guys all loved her. I saw all the comments. So I'm excited that she's back. We're having a party at my house today. So I was like, you want to come over early and do the pod?
I was like, hell yeah.
Gotta love it. Yeah. And I'm excited for the story today because this is one of the most insane stories I've ever heard. It's a really good one. It's really, really crazy. So buckle up. And I think this is one that a lot of people probably have never heard before. So I'm excited about that. Now, today's story does take place in Brazil. So I wanted to note that I did use some sources that were written in Portuguese that I translated using Google Translate. And as we know, online translation isn't perfect. So I think I got everything right, but I'm just saying it's possible some details got lost in translation a little bit. So I want to give that warning. But yeah, I think with that, we're going to dive right into the story today.
Let's ride.
So it was around 4 a.m. when a member of Brazil's Congress, Flordelis dos Santos de Souza, and her husband, Anderson do Carmo, they crossed the Guanabara Bay Bridge from Rio de Janeiro back to Niterói, headed home after a late night out. Now, this is unconfirmed, unsubstantiated, but I did read some rumors online that the reason they were coming home so late at 4 a.m. was because they were at a sex club.
Nice.
So, not sure about that. That's allegedly, but that's a good start to the story, I feel like. So they have to go over this bridge, outside of Rio de Janeiro to the town that they live in. And according to Flordelis, two suspicious-looking men on a motorcycle had appeared alongside their car, and they were just kind of following them and catching up to them. And they did this twice where they pulled up to the side of their car as they're driving. In my mind, it's like giving Princess Diana, that whole thing.
Yeah.
But so they're a little bit freaked out about this. And she says that her husband, Anderson, kind of sensed some danger and he kind of hits the gas. He's trying to lose them, and they were super close to home. So he swings hard into the driveway of their home, which is actually like a gated compound because she's a member of Brazil's Congress. And we're going to talk about this woman. She's got a lot of jobs. Okay. So they've got some money. So luckily they pull into the driveway of the gated compound that they shared with more than 30 of their 55 adopted children and some of their grandchildren. 55 children adopted.
Wow.
They also have
They're all adopted?
They're not all adopted. There's a few biological kids. I couldn't find an exact number. To me, I know there's at least 3 biological children.
Okay.
But yeah, there's 55 adopted children, and some of those children are like adults now, and they have children. So the grandchildren are also living in the home.
It's giving cult a little bit.
You got it, dude. It is giving cult.
I love adoption. I think it's great. I would love to adopt someday. But like 55, you're on Hinge. Like that is not normal behavior.
Yes. No, that,
Something weird's going on there. Normal people don't do that.
Yeah, you could say something weird is going on here. Spoiler alert. Some weird shit's going on here. So according to Flordelis, she says that they thought that they had lost these men on the motorcycle. Like they closed the gate. They didn't see them come in. And while Flordelis headed inside the home, Anderson stayed in the car in the garage, which is like a separate building, to send a couple of emails before he entered the house full of dozens of kids. So he's like, hold on, I'm going to send a couple emails and then I'll be inside. Now, Flordelis had...
Wait, they're out at his sex club and they have 50 kids at home?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, go on.
They've got 55 children, all their grandkids at home.
What are they doing up till 4 a.m. when they have 50 kids at home?
And she's a congresswoman.
There's a lot going on here. Okay.
Alex, we're just scratching the surface. This is, yes, there
the
is
math
so
isn't
much going
mathing.
on.
Something's weird. Something's real weird.
Yep. So he stays in the car to send these emails, and she says that by the time she gets inside the house, she hears gunshots ring out almost immediately. And there were 18 shots in total. Every single bullet had been fired directly into Anderson's groin area. So like some hit his groin, some hit his thighs as well. Overall, there were 30 total wounds, including all the exit wounds, but there were 18 shots to his groin. Okay? This is a very specific type of murder, in my opinion. Now, one of the couple's daughters ran outside and she found Anderson on the ground covered in blood. Now, of course, they call for an ambulance and Anderson is rushed to the local hospital, but he was pronounced dead shortly after arrival. He was only 42 years old at the time. 42 is pretty young to have 55 children. I gotta say that.
Yeah.
Now, while Flordelis seemed to believe that these 2 masked men on the motorcycle had intended to rob the family, the 30 bullets directly to his groin seemed to indicate that this was a targeted killing and not some sort of robbery gone wrong.
Well, they didn't take anything, right?
They didn't take anything left. Apparently, allegedly, according to her story.
Okay.
We'll put it that way. So
A little bit of foreshadowing. Okay, I like it.
So the question really for investigators was, why would someone want to kill a man like Anderson do Carmo? He was a pastor. He was a co-founder of a local church. He was the Secretary General of the Social Democratic Party in Rio, and he was the husband of possibly the most famous congresswoman in Brazil. This was someone who was seen as an important, like, philanthropic member of the community, as like, you know, all he does is just help the community.
All he does is adopt children, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean,
Now,
what year was this?
This is, I forget,
Was it somewhat recent or was it a long time ago?
2019.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay. So
I couldn't
pretty
remember off the top
fairly
of my head.
recent.
Yes, this is pretty recent. So by the time of her husband's murder, Flordelis' career was expansive. She was actually the pastor at 6 different mega churches over the years.
Oh, God, not this. Have you watched Righteous Gemstones?
Oh my God, yes.
Is this Brazil's Righteous Gemstone
Yes,
family?
exactly. Picture Righteous Gemstones. Like the mega churches, like huge crowds, all very like televangelist type deals. Which I don't think she had like a TV show for it like that, but like it was definitely evangelist. Like it is a big, big production.
Okay.
So in addition to being a pastor at these 6 different mega churches, she was also an award-winning gospel singer who had sold over 10 million copies of her album.
Wow.
She was an influencer with more than 1 million online followers.
These people are booked and busy.
Yeah. And as mentioned, she was a member of Brazil's Chamber of Deputies, which is comparable to the U.S. House of Representatives. So that's why I'm referring to her as a congresswoman. They don't call it Congress there, but it's kind of the same thing.
Similar, yeah.
Now, in the 2018 elections, Flordelis was actually the most voted for woman in the entire state of Rio de Janeiro. So this is a big deal. People loved her. She had a lot of fans and she had a lot of supporters. And she was, by every measure that Brazilian evangelical society cared about, a saint. She was an inspiration to women of God, to women of faith. But there was a lot that Brazilians didn't know about how Flordelis operated behind closed doors. After her husband's death, the cracks in her saintly image began to show.
Dun,
And
dun.
dun, dun, dun. Oh, you're going to like this next one. And what seeped through was pretty ugly. I was proud of that one. Now, rumors about fabricated rescue stories, sex clubs, abuse, cult-like control over her children.
There it is.
There it is, dude. As soon as you said cult, I was like, she's got it. But and household rituals dark enough to make even her most devoted followers go quiet. Flordelis was regarded for being a woman born to tough circumstances who climbed her way to the top by spreading God's word. But we will come to learn that that wasn't necessarily the case. Now, Flordelis dos Santos de Souza was born on February 5th, 1961 in, give me a minute here, Jacarezinho. This is a neighborhood in Rio de Janeiro that would eventually become one of the most violent favelas in the city's already brutal landscape. And if you've never heard the term favela before, a favela is a low-income urban settlement, essentially a sort of shanty town, typically built on the outskirts or hillsides of Brazilian cities, where residents have historically had little access to government services, infrastructure, or legal land ownership. So there's tons of crime because these are areas that are not policed normally. They, a lot of them don't have electricity. They don't have access to plumbing and clean water, things like that. And they're very densely packed up in the hillsides. And they really emerged as a result of rapid urbanization and systemic inequality. And while they're often characterized by very tight-knit communities and rich cultural life, they're also frequently marked by poverty, inadequate housing, and very high rates of crime and violence. Now, Flordelis was one of 5 children, and her mother, Carmo, and her stepfather rarely had the money to adequately feed them. But it's rumored that Flordelis' mom was known by neighbors to make miracles happen via rituals. Now, some describe these rituals as dark magic, while others saw it as harnessing the power of God. And it's a really contentious point because, of course, like in Christianity, magic is not historically seen as like
witchcraft,
a godly thing. It's usually seen as like the work of the devil.
Yeah.
I don't know. Again, you guys know I'm not super religious, but that's what it seems like in movies.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's claimed that she used like these kind of witchy rituals and ritualistic chanting to help others in the community. She even once cured a neighbor of a terminal lung cancer with her ritualistic chanting.
So her mom was a grifter too.
Yeah, I don't know if she took money for this. And of course, this is one of the things like all of this stuff about witchcraft, whatever, this is all allegedly. There's no evidence, documented evidence of this. This might just be rumors from people who lived in the community. But I like it, so it's in here. So according to some, the practice of ritualistic magic was passed from Flordelis' mother, Carmo, to Flordelis herself. And we are going to talk about some rituals that she would perform in her house later on. Now, it is worth pausing here to point out something important that I read about. Apparently, Brazil has a long and ugly history of using witchcraft accusations as a weapon, specifically against Black women and women of color. Witchcraft arrived in Brazil with European colonizers, and the local women most often accused of it were those who practiced rituals rooted in African and indigenous cultures. So they would point at these people who, weren't practicing Christianity,
right,
and they'd be like, witch, and,
right,
it was used to link them to the devil and these malevolent practices. Now, in Brazil, black magic has historically functioned less as a description of an actual practice and more as an accusation, a way of stigmatizing someone as maleficent, immoral, or evil. So I wanted to point that out because, of course, we're going to talk about, these accusations of like rituals and witchcraft and stuff like that. And Flordelis was a Black woman in Brazil. She was a woman of color. So you can say, people are making these accusations to demonize her, but there are some credible accounts of her doing some ritualistic stuff. Whether or not she's actually trying to practice witchcraft, I don't know about that. I don't personally believe in witchcraft, so I don't think she was, but I just wanted to give that context. Now, whether or not magic was really a part of Flordelis' childhood is unclear, but it is very clear that God and religion were. Now, tragedy had struck her life pretty early. When she was 14, she lost both her father and her brother in a car accident. And rather than collapsing inward, she seemed to have pushed outward towards purpose, towards community, and towards the church as a structure that could absorb some of this grief and kind of transform it into her identity. Like 14 years old is kind of when you're figuring out who you are as a person. So she was actually raised in an evangelical church, and her mother, Carmo, brought her every single weekend. And it was there that a teenage Flordelis found her voice, both literally and in terms of her purpose. So she actually sang in the church choir there, and like we know, she ended up being a very successful gospel singer. But she played guitar at services, and somewhere in those pews, surrounded by a community that offered structure and meaning inside one of Rio's most dangerous and impoverished neighborhoods, she developed what would become the central narrative of her entire life. She truly believed that God had called her specifically to save the children that everyone else had abandoned.
There it is. There's the 55 kids. I see.
Yep.
I see.
Yes, this is all coming together.
Okay.
So you have to remember, so she's born in 1961. She's a teen in the 70s. And this town that she grew up in the 70s was not like a forgiving place.
Yeah.
There was, again, it's not being policed. So drug trafficking ran openly through its streets. And children fell into it young. There's a lot of gang activity, lots of crime, lots of violence. And these kids are getting pulled into it. Not because they're bad people necessarily at the time, but because poverty and the absence of any real state support left them with pretty much no other option.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're probably not getting an education, and if they are, it's probably not a great one. So it's not something that is, you know, oh, just work hard and you can work your way out of it.
Right.
Not saying that that is impossible at the time, but it's very, very difficult.
Yeah.
So during her adolescence, Flordelis engaged in social causes, and she began to help the local children and adolescents that were involved in these gangs, in the drug trafficking, prostitution, or any kids that were being abused at home. And what's interesting is when she starts doing all of this, she was actually still a teenager herself. So this starts very early on in her life when she has no resources, no sort of like institutional backing, no formal training, no money really to support this. And all she had was her small house that she lived in with her mother and her stepfather, and this mom who kind of modeled service through the church for her. And apparently this like conviction that this is her calling. So she turned the small home into an informal daycare, housing more than 100 children over the years, and she would just kind of welcome them in and care for them. And the word began to spread throughout the community.
Well, that's sweet.
It is sweet. You're like, this woman, what a saint this woman is at first. And, you know, it seems like she did a lot of good work, especially earlier in her life. And so while she's doing all of this, she worked at a bakery during the week. And this is where she would get the money to help support her mother, who at one point in her teen years, her mom's husband dies. I don't know how, but, you know, she's helping to support her mother, support her family, and then also like feeding these kids and stuff like that. Now, in 1979, she actually graduated with a teaching degree, and from then on, she left her job at the bakery to start teaching early childhood education. And the classroom became an extension of the same impulse to get to the children before the streets did. Now, in 1994, she made headlines when she adopted 37 children at once.
So 37 of the 50 were one time.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. 14 of these kids were infants.
One person can't care for that many
That's
infants.
what I'm saying. That's insane. So, and you have to remember, she's born in 1961, so she's 33 at this point, and how can one person care for 37 children? And here, the thing about these adoptions is some of them are like by the book, like, you know, legal adoptions,
right?
But many of them are like illegal adoption. Like there's not adoption papers and stuff. It's like she's taking these kids in and she's saying, I have adopted you. You are now my child type of thing.
Okay.
These kids who are abandoned or involved in crime, things like that. Now, this first giant adoption of the 37 kids, according to Flordelis, she said that this happened because she woke up one morning to desperate children pounding on her door. And these children, she says, had been fleeing from a massacre at Central do Brazil train station. And she said she simply opened her home to all of them. They had all fled from this massacre at the train station. Editing, Kelsey, just jumping in real quick with my really horrible laptop microphone to let you guys know that I know the word is fled, and I said fleed. That's really embarrassing. Thank you. And this massacre, this is a real thing that happened. Like, this is a real historical event.
So did it just so happen that a bunch of kids without parents, were their parents killed in the massacre?
That's the question, right?
Okay.
The story... Or
was it just a group of orphan kids and then the I don't understand.
The story doesn't make sense. That's why there are some sources that connect some of the children to being survivors of a different massacre, the Candelaria massacre of July 1993. And what happened with this massacre is there were off-duty military police that opened fire on a group of street children sleeping outside of a church in downtown Rio, killing 8 children.
That is so sad.
It is incredibly sad. And it is believed that some of these 37 children, like a few of them, may have been survivors of this massacre. But these things aren't being like documented well. But the point is like once people looked back on this after her husband's death, it seemed pretty evident that this story she had been telling the whole time about, all of these children were fleeing from the massacre at the train station and I saved them all. It wasn't true and it didn't make sense.
Yeah.
But this was a story that was like passed through the community and it started to get media attention and things like this. And people in the community started to look to Flordelis as like a savior.
And no one questioned her then? Like, this doesn't make sense?
That I don't know why. I don't know why, but people seem to believe this story at the time. Okay. I don't know if she like if she got the kids in on it, like saying stuff. I don't know.
Never waste a good crisis, as they say. And she certainly did not.
Never waste a good crisis. I like that. I mean, I don't like it, but I like it. Now, like I said, the story doesn't really line up, and investigators later flagged this dramatic rescue narrative as probably fabricated, and they believe it was really a story engineered to attract donations and sympathy from NGOs and charities rather than just some spontaneous act of kindness that she was doing. So you'll start to see a lot of this seems to be about getting money. And boy, does she get money. She becomes very successful. Like I said, they lived on this like gated compound by the end. And here's the thing that's not in dispute about this story is these children were real. Whether like where they came from, whether they were street kids, orphans, infants, whatever, if they were caught in some sort of massacre that they survived, they were real and they were really taken in by Flordelis. So she didn't just completely make this up. But the question is, was this an act of kindness or was this a marketing strategy?
Right.
Whatever the fuck it was, it worked for her.
Yeah.
It worked as a marketing strategy. And the story was pretty much irresistible to people. It was this poor woman from a Rio favela who became a teacher and a singer, and she, was preaching the gospel, and she opened her home and her life on a scale that defied comprehension. People had never heard of, someone being so selfless before to take on all these kids. And the media took notice of this. Churches took notice of this. And a national mythology began to take shape around Flordelis, the mother of the forgotten, the patron saint of the street children, the woman whose love was too large to be contained by biology. And that's really, like, people refer to her as the mother of flowers or the mother of the forgotten. And, it's a great story. And at first, it seems like she was helping these kids for sure. At least on the outside, it seemed like that. Now, what the cameras didn't really linger on was what was happening inside that household. Eventually, there were 55 children who passed through her care over the years. But this is where the story gets complicated in a lot of ways.
When did her husband come into play? Are we going to get there?
That's where we are now.
Okay.
So in the early 1990s, a teenage boy named Anderson do Carmo began living at Flordelis' home as one of her many adopted children.
No!
Yes.
How old was she at this point?
This is they believe it was 1991, but there are some, it was early 90s.
So she was 20?
No, she was 30. He was 14 years old when she took him in.
No!
And by the way, guys, in case you forgot the guy's name, This is the man that she marries that is murdered. Okay? She adopts a 14-year-old boy as her own and later marries him.
Talk about grooming.
Here's the thing, though. She doesn't marry him right away, okay? Because first, when he first got to the home...
He turns 18 next month, okay?
Truly. When he first got to the home, though, he started a romantic relationship with a girl named Simone, who was Flordelis' biological daughter, who was also a teenager at the time.
Gross.
So Anderson's dating her daughter. That relationship ends. We don't really know why or how or whatever. And then somewhere along the way, Flordelis becomes romantically and sexually involved with the boy. And of course, she claims that this didn't happen until he was of age and whatever.
That's also a good call out of like, if you have a bunch of teenagers that aren't related, living together, like living closely, like that's not super cool. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
How much can you supervise them? Like, maybe that's not the best idea to have that many.
Yeah. And here's the thing is, Simone is going to come back in this story. So I want you to remember her. She's the biological daughter that had the relationship with Anderson, who becomes her stepfather. Okay? It's fucking weird.
It's like the Cyruses.
The Cyruses.
Miley Cyrus's sister, I forget the name. There's a Noah. It might have been Noah. Dated like this actor, and now the mom is married to the actor.
No.
Yes. Yes way. You didn't know that?
No. What the fuck?
Yeah.
The way I would never speak to my mother again.
It's just gross. Like
It's
weird.
gross.
Yeah.
It's gross. Okay. Wow, that threw me through a loop. I did not know that.
Sorry, I didn't know you didn't know that.
No, now I'm like, do we need like a mini episode on this? Like, I need to look into this. So yeah, by 1993, Flordelis was 32. Anderson's a teenager, and his adoption, it was never made official, which I think is important because I don't know if they let you marry your adopted
someone
son
you legally
in Brazil,
adopted.
but yeah. Now, in 1998, when Anderson was 21 years old, the two got married. And whatever power imbalance existed at the start of their relationship, the couple went on to build something that looked from the outside like genuine partnership in ministry. I want to be very clear. I'm not saying this was a genuine partnership, blah, blah, blah. But at the time, this was accepted. Like people... They were starting to gain some power, gain some notoriety for what they were doing because, spoiler alert, like they get married and they continue taking in all these kids and like adopting more children together and things like that. And this was, again, accepted. Like people didn't, it wasn't like some big scandal like, oh my God, she married her, whatever.
Did people know that part?
I don't know.
Okay.
I think in the early 90s, it's probably...
They probably didn't, I feel like.
I don't know. I think they did. It seems like they did. No.
Okay.
Like, I don't know how they were married before they got super famous.
Right.
So I think they could have found out, but I think it was one of those things where it's like, by the time that they were super famous, it was so long ago that it wasn't harped on. That's my impression of it. Like, I'm trying to think.
Like, and if she was like a beloved figure, people are more likely to like want to write it off, maybe. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
You make excuses sometimes for people you like.
It's like
that's a big one.
I'm going to give the analogy of like Brad and Angelina, right? When he started dating Angelina and like, he met her on the movie while he was married to Jennifer Aniston or whatever.
Right.
That was like fucking huge news. Everyone's talking about it. But 20 years later, when him and Angelina have 17 children and they've been married for 20 years or whatever, it's like people mention it like, oh yeah, remember how he like probably cheated on his ex-wife with her and whatever. But like, no, it's not seen as a big deal anymore.
Right.
That's how I picture the scenario. I don't know for sure if that's how it actually was, but people seem to like respect this couple's relationship despite this age gap, despite the history of it. And like I said, they keep adopting children and they start kind of co-founding these businesses together. So they co-founded the Comunidade. Why do I try and say this in another language? I don't know why. I have too much fucking faith in myself. I'm going to translate this in my head. I don't know if this is actually what it means, but it looks like the Community Evangelical Ministry of Flordelis in 1999. So this is like the ministry under her brand. Like she is now a face and a brand and a business herself. Again, to me, isn't Jesus supposed to be the brand of Christianity?
It's giving gemstones.
Yes, it's giving gemstones. Like, why is it the ministry of Florida? I don't know. Maybe that's normal. Maybe that's normal. Like I said, I don't know too much about religion. But yeah, so they start drawing in thousands and thousands of followers. And this really established both of them as significant figures in Brazil's booming evangelical movement. Anderson became the very charismatic patriarch of the family. He reportedly wrote psalms in his own blood, which apparently people were like, hell yeah, brother. Like, they like that.
Sick.
But then we're going to talk about this happens later on, and people are like, no, that's really bad. So I don't know really what the difference is.
Yeah.
But he was writing these psalms in his own blood, and he commanded the loyalty of tens of thousands of parishioners. And he was really the one managing the household. He was taking on this very, that very classic male role in the house of the patriarch. He was the one that handled the money and the business side of things, while Flordelis was the face of the brand. She was the singer. She was the celebrity. She was the name on the church. She was the brand. But he seemed to have a lot of control over it from afar, like from behind the scenes,
right.
I guess I should say. He controlled the money, the finances, how the resources were distributed amongst all of their fucking children. And he applied what the court would later describe as rigid discipline to the family's internal conflicts. He refused to give preferential treatment to Flordelis' favorites among the children, insisting on being very even-handed across the 55 people who had varying degrees of biological, emotional, and legal connection to their parents. But not everybody in the household appreciated this, like, fair approach to things.
Okay.
One of them being Flordelis, and we're going to talk about it. But hint, hint, there's a cult-like culture going on in this house that people don't know about. And part of that is a hierarchy that she develops, which we'll get to in a few minutes here.
But he didn't play into the hierarchy.
He didn't play into the hierarchy, it sounds like.
I mean, I feel like that's healthy. That's probably correct if you're going to do this nuts thing. Like, you
Yes.
can't. Yeah.
Yeah,
You
the
have to
hierarchy is not good, I'll tell you that.
Not in a family. Absolutely not.
No. Now, testimony collected during the investigation described a household that was beneath the inspirational surface deeply complicated. It was marked by romantic entanglements between the adopted siblings.
Knew it.
Jealousy.
Ding, ding, ding. Called it.
Literally. Jealousy, hierarchy, and just some simmering resentments, and also allegedly abuse. Now, while Anderson anchored the household, Flordelis was building this public brand. There was a 2009 documentary film made about her life. This is like, I'm telling you, she was seen as a hero in Brazil at the time. And the name of the documentary was Flordelis, One Word is Enough to Change. And this pretty much made her like blow up after this documentary.
I bet you that didn't age well.
No. Let's just say there's a second documentary made about her that doesn't go as well. It's a totally different narrative, I'll tell you that. So this documentary comes out, she is actually signed with Rio de Janeiro's MK music label, and they released her first gospel album, which was titled Fire and Anointing, which sounds so ominous.
Yeah.
Sounds so ominous. But that album came out in 2010, and it was very well received within the contemporary Christian music market. Like I said, she sold more than 10 million copies of this album over the years. Now, more releases followed. She toured, she preached, she was photographed with politicians, religious leaders, and celebrities who wanted to be associated with the woman who had like dedicated her life to helping children. And politics, for her, was the natural next step. Evangelicals love to see God in government. So she ran for the South Gonçalves. I did not say that right, guys, but that was the third try, so that's what you're going to get. But she ran for this council in 2004 unsuccessfully. Then she ran for mayor in that same city that I cannot say in 2016. She was elected mayor, and in 2018, she ran for federal deputy, which is basically a Congress seat in the Chamber of Deputies. So she wins in 2018. And like I said, this is when she got the most votes of any female in this election. And she ran on the Social Democratic Party ticket. I don't know if, like, in Brazil, if the Democratic Party is considered left-leaning or, you know what I mean?
Right.
So I'm not really sure like what her politics were, because I would be surprised if she was like left leaning with her evangelical background. But yeah, I'm not really sure what her politics were. So she takes her seat in Congress in 2019. And again, Brazil's obsessed with her story. Preacher, gospel, congresswoman, savior of children. And Brazil was a country that was hungry for these redemption stories, particularly ones rooted in faith and favela survival. And they couldn't get enough of this. But the moment investigators cracked the household open after Anderson's murder, a very different picture began to emerge. So former members of the ministry, neighbors of the family, and different witnesses, some who were actually some of the children who lived inside the house, they came forward with accounts that described not a family in the home, but something more controlled and more cult-like, and I would say way more disturbing. Now, it's important for me to note, for legal reasons, that some of what I'm about to tell you, if not most, these are allegations. Actually, all of what I'm about to tell you for the next few minutes are allegations. So these are allegations that are drawn from formal police depositions, investigative reporting, witness testimony, media interviews, but they are not proven facts. And we'll talk about at the end of the episode the actual convictions in this case. But a lot of like the abuse and stuff I'm going to talk about
is alleged.
It's alleged. No one was convicted of it, and yada, yada.
No one sue my friend Kelsey. I'll be really mad.
Yes, please. So the first thing some of the adopted children described was the alleged hierarchy established in the home, almost like their own custom caste system. According to witnesses, Flordelis drew clear distinctions between her children, prioritizing what she called the first generation.
I have a question.
Yes.
I almost asked this in the beginning. Like, it sounds like based on those kind of like outskirt neighborhoods, like there almost is somewhat of a caste system that still exists in Brazil, or did at that time. Is that kind of true?
I think there's for sure a social class system,
right.
but not a full caste system like you would see in India.
Right.
But yeah, there seems to be there's a big disparity between the wealthy and the rest of society, for sure.
It's sad because they like escape that just to find it in a different way almost. And like, you know, maybe their basic needs are met a little better when they're in that. I don't know. But yeah, it's sad.
Yeah, and I want to do some episodes. There's a couple cases from India that I know about that I want to cover because it's really interesting. You know, I think the caste system, first of all, horrible, but very interesting how it has changed over time and how still to this day it affects people's lives. Like, you know, there's one case in particular, and I can't remember the name of the woman off the top of my head, but, you know, this woman was murdered for having a romantic relationship with a man outside of her caste because she, you know, was seen as bringing shame upon herself and her family because the man that she had a relationship with was part of, I believe it's called like the untouchables, like the lowest, you know, part of the caste system. And, you know, this was like a modern day case. However, I believe, and I might be misremembering the details, but I believe like her and the guy, they were like going to the same university and in the same program and everything. So it's one of those things where like, you know, by the letter of the law, the caste system isn't supposed to exist anymore. You know, these people are allowed to attend university and, you know, have an education and things like that. But people, despite that, it seems like some people still really hold to it in really horrific ways. So I'm not super educated on the caste system. So hopefully I didn't, you know, say anything incorrect there. But
it's probably not fair. It's not fair to draw direct parallels to, you know, whatever socially is going on in Brazil in that. But just interesting. I didn't know much. I don't know much about the socioeconomic situation in Brazil.
It definitely seems like there is like a social class system that is, I think, I don't know that much about it, but it seems like there might be some corruption going on with the wealthy and the government. Yeah. But I don't know that for certain. Allegedly. Actually, I know we have listeners from Brazil because they've messaged me before. So listeners from Brazil, if I got anything wrong, educate us. I don't know that much about your country. I would love to learn, and I also want to come visit.
I really want to visit.
So, yeah, so she prioritizes what she calls the first generation, and this first generation includes her biological children as well as...
So who did she have the biological children with? Do we not know?
So we know that her daughter is obviously not Anderson's child.
I hope so.
Because they're like closer to the same age. We don't know who the father of some of the biological children is, but we know that I know that she and Anderson had at least one biological son together.
Okay.
But it's unclear to me on the numbers, the breakdown of like biological versus not and all of that.
Okay.
So
interesting, especially with her being a religious figure, because like, you know, divorce and like having kids out of wedlock, not typically a good thing in religious circles. So interesting.
It is interesting. So it's her biological kids, but also like the first kids that she adopted.
Those like 30 or whatever?
Yes. Those are the first generation kids.
Aren't they old by now?
Yes.
Okay.
And a lot of that, some of them have left the house, but a lot of them still live there too.
Right. Because you said there were even grandkids on the compound, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So these like first generation kids, this is like the highest tier of the hierarchy. And she basically treated them much better than the rest of the children. They were entitled to a separate pantry. They were entitled to better gifts, more money from, like from their parents. And the rest of the household was restricted to a shared communal refrigerator. They weren't like fed as well. Not that there was nothing to say that they were like starving them or anything like that, but like they were living two very different lifestyles, like the first generation kids and the second generation kids. And that's really where the hierarchy was. And this is what Anderson was trying to like get rid of. As I think, they get married, he's getting older, he's gaining more power in this relationship, but also in this household. And he's trying to be like, no, we're going to treat all of the adopted children fairly.
Yeah.
Everyone's going to get the same amount of money, whatever. And Flordelis didn't like this because there's actually like an Amazon documentary. That's the one that I was saying, like there's a second documentary about her that's a different story. And the way that they talk about this household was like Flordelis was like God to them. Everyone,
to all the kids?
I don't know that like by the end of it that's true, but like she is pretty much the cult leader here.
Okay.
Everyone is fighting to be in her favor.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of jealousy.
She probably fed off that.
Oh, she loved this shit.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is when Anderson starts treating everybody fairly, she loses her power because she was really the one that determined your access to resources, to comfort, and to safety, and to food. So like, if you are not in her favor and like working towards her favor, you're fucked. And this gives her like bargaining power with everybody. It gives her control over the household. And I would imagine that when Anderson was a teen, he was a part of this dynamic. And maybe that's why he wanted to get rid of it as he was like gaining power in the house. I don't know this for certain, but like my impression is Flordelis did not like that Anderson was taking this power away from her and that she didn't want him to have any authority over what was happening in the house. Now, multiple former members of Flordelis' church used the same word when describing the household. They described it as a sect, like a religious sect. A man who lived with Flordelis for 5 years in the late 1990s. So I don't know if this man counts as one of the 55 children. He only lived with her for 5 years, but like he was someone she had taken in for a while. But he gave a formal deposition to the Rio de Janeiro civil police in which he stated plainly that he believed that he had been a part of a genuine cult. Like he describes it as a cult. And his testimony, obtained by the newspaper Extra and reported across multiple Brazilian outlets, it described an internal world that bore almost no resemblance to the charitable Christian household that Flordelis presented publicly. According to his deposition, new arrivals to the home were required to undergo a purification ritual upon entry. Again, this is all allegedly according to this guy. I personally I find him very believable, but it's allegedly.
Allegedly.
So he says that this purification ritual was 7 days of isolation in a room with no windows, dressed in white, eating only rice and vegetables with a Bible as your sole companion. So you're just locked in a room.
I mean, solitary confinement is like one of the worst punishments, and they're doing that to these kids.
Yes. Now, he said that visits during this period of purification came only from a select inner circle. So usually it was like the first gen of the kids, like the upper of the hierarchy. At the end of the isolation, according to this witness, Flordelis herself came into the room and initiated a sexual encounter.
No.
Now, he told investigators that the experience felt, in his words, as though he had been with a divine being. Like at the time when this happened to him, he said he felt like he had been like chosen by God to be with this divine being. And I don't know anything about how old he was when he came into the home or anything like that, but I can imagine like if you're like a teenage boy and like someone is grooming you and abusing you and using the word of God to manipulate you, I see why he would feel that way. Now, Flordelis assigned everyone in the household a biblical name. So Anderson do Carmo was Daniel or Niel, and they had to go by their biblical names. And she told them that they were all angels, and that's why they were selected to live in the house. She told them that she was there to save them, and she had made them angels pretty much. Now, the naming, the isolation ritual, the hierarchy, and the sense of divine purpose, these are all recognizable features of high control groups and cults. And multiple witnesses describe them independently. So, like, this is the most detailed account that this one guy gives, but there's a lot of people who are corroborating different pieces and parts of, like, what's going on here. Now, while Flordelis was pushing the word of God, she also seemed to push the use of magic and rituals. Now, this same witness described watching Flordelis instruct some of her children to cut their hands with a small knife and use their blood to write Bible psalms.
Like he was doing?
Yes. Yeah. So, and like they're doing all these like rituals and chanting and stuff with the Bible psalms that are written in blood. At the time, approximately 30 children were living in the home when this was happening. Now, he also described a ritual involving one of her adoptive sons placing a photograph of a businessman who financially supported the family. I couldn't find the guy's name, but he would like make donations to the family. And so they did this ritual where they would put the photo of this guy on top of an apple and surround it by colored ribbons and then pour honey all over the photo. And the witness said that this was basically a ritual that was meant to spiritually influence the man into continuing his financial support. And so to me, it sounds like she really believes this. Like she believes that doing this ritual is going to like bring money into the home.
Right. I know like Jewish people, people that practice Jewish faith, they have like honey and apples on some holiday. And I wonder if maybe that's where she got it from. Like it might be in the Old Testament or something.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. I didn't know that. Now, in another ritual that this witness alleges he saw, Anderson stood naked in the center of a chalk circle drawn on the floor while Flordelis conducted what the witness described as a prayer or a chant in which Anderson was presented as an offering to God. So you're getting your ex-adopted son, now husband, naked in front of all your other adopted children.
In front of children.
Drawing a chalk circle and like, chalk circles, I don't know, but in the movies, they're satanic, right?
I guess, yeah.
Or I don't know. Or maybe they protect you from something. I don't know, but it's fucking... All I know is...
It's weird.
This is out of a horror film.
Yeah.
It's freaking me out. Now, the Rio de Janeiro State Prosecutor's Office also received 2 anonymous tips specifically alleging that Flordelis conducted black magic rituals inside of her home. And this seemed to be something that, like, there were tons of whispers about throughout the community. Those tips were formally forwarded to the Homicide Division investigating Anderson's murder. So, like, they're looking into this and all of these allegations. Now, the most serious allegations to emerge from the investigation went beyond the cult dynamics and the rituals and all of that, and they went into direct abuse. The same witness that I've been talking about told investigators that after a teenage girl arrived in the household, Anderson asked Flordelis for permission to have a sexual relationship with her. So again, these are all allegations, but it sounds there are allegations against Flordelis for sexually abusing these people and Anderson. Now, according to the deposition, Flordelis allowed Anderson this sexual relationship, and it did occur multiple times. The girl, according to the witness, did not want this, but she complied because it was what Flordelis, told her to do. And Flordelis is, this woman of God who had saved them. Now, the witness...
Classic cult. Even if she had wanted it, like, air quotes, if this girl is young enough, like, she can't actually want it, and that's still really messed up.
Right. She's a minor, so she can't give consent. But yeah, so the witness also told police that Flordelis received foreign pastors at the home and that one of her daughters was offered to them, like, sexually. So she's like bringing out, these other pastors, and they're like, hey, do you want to rape one of our minor daughters? Now, again, all of this is allegedly, and I'm not going to harp on the Anderson thing too much because he was murdered. He is the victim in this story. And, he was not convicted of any crime. However, obviously, if this is true, this is absolutely fucking horrific. And this man was a bad man, if that is true. But
allegedly,
to me, what I will say is it doesn't seem like too much of a stretch to me.
Yeah.
Based on what else we're hearing.
If he knows she's doing that and he stays with her, like she's doing it to the kids and he stays with her, he's complicit in that. So it's just a tiny jump to him doing it to, you know what I mean? Like, yeah.
Absolutely. Now, during her own trial in 2022, Flordelis herself claimed from the stand that Anderson had subjected her and other members of the household to sexual and physical abuse for years. And her biological daughter, Simone, made similar, she backed this up. She said, what my mom is saying about Anderson is true. Remember, Simone is the biological daughter who was initially having a relationship with Anderson.
Did she say that her relationship with Anderson at the time was consensual, or is she saying it never was?
I am not 100% sure. Okay. My understanding is that her relationship with Anderson at the time was consensual, but that once Anderson was like the head of the household, then he started abusing other members of the house as well as Flordelis.
Okay.
We'll get to it, but I find these claims hard to believe about Flordelis specifically being abused by Anderson. Not saying it's not true. I'm just saying I find it a little bit of a stretch because she did hold all of the power in the household.
Right.
Now, by the time that Flordelis had won her congressional seat in 2018, the tensions inside the household had been building for years. Anderson controlled all of the money, and this meant that Flordelis had to bend to his will as well. Flordelis' income from the gospel music, from the ministry, and now from her congressional salary all flowed through him. And he decided what got spent, what got saved, and who got what. According to witnesses, he enforced that control very evenly throughout the house. And eventually, he started to try and enforce it evenly, when it came to Flordelis herself. Of course, she doesn't fucking like this. And she doesn't like that he's challenging her power, taking it away. And she's trying to think of a solution to this problem she has. There's, of course, the option of divorce, but that doesn't really work for her. That doesn't really work for her whole brand. And also, he's in control of all the finances. So she was worried about what that was going to do. This would be kind of a financial reckoning for her. So Flordelis did what she had apparently always done when the world did not cooperate with the story she was trying to tell. She turned to the people most loyal to her, the first generation. She had recruited them / saved them, she claimed. She had given them a purpose. And together, they decided that Anderson had to die. Because, of course, they're going to do whatever the fuck Flordelis says. This is a cult.
I just listened to your Christine Banfield and Joseph Ryan episode. Mm-hmm. And I think you guys talked about this. Just get the freaking divorce.
Just
don't kill your spouse.
You're just going to end up in prison. Just don't kill your spouse. Just get the divorce. It's cheaper than going to prison for the rest of your life.
Shout out to Going West. Excellent podcast. They do a little song. They're like, get a divorce. Get a divorce.
Really? I got to check that out. Now, the conspiracy to kill Anderson involved at least 10 people in total. There were children and grandchildren of the household operating in different capacities. Some planning, some poisoning, some procuring weapons, some covering
tracks. Wait, they were all involved?
At least 10. We know of at least 10 that were alleged to be involved.
Wow.
We'll get to convictions and things like that.
Okay.
Now, it was, as investigators would later conclude, an intra-family criminal organization assembled and directed by Flordelis from the top. Now, this all started as early as May 2018, a full year before Anderson's death, while Flordelis was still in the middle of her congressional campaign, so she hadn't even been elected yet.
She's busy. She's campaigning. She's taking care of those kids. She's plotting to kill her husband. A woman who says a woman can't do it all.
Yeah, for real. Stop underestimating women, especially the evil ones. They can really do it all. So about a year before his actual death, she and several of her children allegedly began lacing his food with poison. According to police, there were at least 6 separate attempts to kill Anderson before the night of June 16th, 2019, which is when he was shot.
Poison is a woman's weapon. That's how women usually do it.
That's true. That's true.
Makes sense. That was her first try.
Yeah. Now, Anderson was actually hospitalized multiple times between May 2018 and June 2019 due to what appeared to be intoxication symptoms, but no one at the time could identify the cause of like why he was so ill. Of course, we now believe it is poison. During the investigation, authorities discovered that Simone, Flordelis' biological daughter, had searched the internet for information about cyanide in food several months before her ex-boyfriend/stepfather's death. Now, Simone had told the police that the search was just simple curiosity and had nothing to do with any plot to kill Anderson, but of course, investigators did not believe her. Now, Anderson, to his credit, he began to suspect that something was up. He reportedly threatened to install surveillance on all of the family's phones after discovering signs that his murder was being planned within his own household.
So he saw this coming, kind of?
I guess. This is like again, it's all allegedly, like, according to some of the kids in the house, but like he was apparently threatening the kids in that, or like the people living in the house, because some of them are not kids anymore, they're adults. But he's like, hey, so you guys are planning something and I'm gonna like be watching your phone, so like you better be fucking careful, like you better stop what you're doing, type of thing, which is crazy. But yeah, this...
I feel like it's like a stereotypical parent. Like, if you don't behave, I'm going to take your cell phone. But it's like, if you don't stop trying to murder me,
yes,
I'm going
to
take your cell phone.
If you don't stop planning my demise, you're going to be grounded. But yeah, this forced Flordelis and the co-conspirators to switch to burner phones for their communications. Now, 3 days before the murder, at least two of the couple's children later told police that they had watched Flordelis write in a notebook, quote, "We will break Anderson's cell phone and throw it off the Rio de Janeiro bridge." His phone was never found, which is interesting because remember her initial story to police was like, oh, he was like sending emails from the car on his phone, but then they never found his phone. So, I mean, you really didn't think that one through very well.
I wonder what was on the phone.
Yeah, I don't know.
I feel like why would she need to get rid of it if there wasn't something?
I mean, maybe like documentation of the abuse going on within the household.
Yeah.
Possibly. That's my best guess. Now, there is a specific cruelty in this timeline because it seems that Anderson knew on some level that the people who shared his home and his table were trying to kill him. Like these kids that he was supposedly trying to help save, but, allegedly abusing, they're all trying to kill him, which is just fucking crazy to know before you are actually killed by them. But, we don't really know why, but he stayed, whether it was out of denial, exhaustion, love, or an inability to imagine what survival without the family would even look like. Because remember, he joined this family when he was 14 years old. This woman who was his wife was also kind of like his mother.
And if he came from a bad situation, which he probably did if he ended up there, like where he's nowhere to go.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably not an easy situation to get out of. Now, when asked during the investigation why divorce had never been considered an option, one of Flordelis' sons, who is actually a pastor himself, quoted what his mother had told him directly. So according to him, Flordelis said, quote, "What can I do? I can't divorce him because it would dishonor the name of God," end quote.
What a nut job.
And here's the thing is the name of God was pretty safe. Flordelis' name, however, is kind of in the shitter at this point. I'll tell you that. So what really happened the night of June 16th, 2019, as far as we can understand, is that Anderson was returning home in the early hours of the morning when he was shot. He was killed in the garage of the family's home, and the official tally would be 18 bullets, again, all directed at the groin, and there were some found in his upper thighs. And it's a weird placement, especially when you find out that it wasn't Flordelis who fired the gun. It was one of the children. Just 2 days after the murder, on June 18th, police found a gun in the bedroom of Flavio dos Santos Rodriguez, which was one of Flordelis' sons. And
they can't get rid of the murder weapon? Stupid. Sorry.
Dude. And it's not even hidden. It's just sitting on top of a dresser drawer.
That's, for how much planning they did, that's pretty stupid if you ask me.
That's what I'm saying. And I feel like it's one of these things where she just didn't even think that they were going to look into it.
So cocky, yeah.
So cocky. So on June 20th, under questioning, Flavio admitted to being the one who had pulled the trigger. He also disclosed that his younger adoptive brother, 18-year-old Lucas dos Santos do Carmo, had helped him acquire this weapon. So again, just getting these people this poor 18-year-old boy, who it sounds like there's a high chance that he's been abused in this adoptive home and now groomed, and now he is involved in this murder. Now, by this point, the robbery story, it's just like days after the police know the robbery story was absolute bullshit.
And you know what? I bet she purposely had them pull the trigger. So she thought like, well, even if it does somehow come back to the family, it wasn't me that pulled the trigger. So like, I'll get off. Like she's literally throwing them directly under the bus.
Oh, that's exactly what she does at trial. That's exactly what she does. Now, by August of 2020, prosecutors announced formal charges against Flordelis and the 10 co-conspirators, including several of her children and one granddaughter. The lead investigator on the case, Alan Duarte, did not mince words about his assessment of the woman at the center of it all. He called her, quote, cold, calculating, and sly, end quote. And he publicly stated that he considered her to be a psychopath. And you know what? Hear, brother. I agree with that one. And this is where we're all going to get a little bit angry, because the Brazilian legal system produced a pretty frustrating part of this case. And I don't know very much about the Brazilian legal system, but like this seems to be inherently wrong in my mind. But I don't know. You guys let me know what you think. I don't understand the reasoning behind this law, but we all have to remember that Flordelis was a sitting member of Congress at the time of her husband's murder.
Oh, I don't like where this is going.
Yep. Under Brazilian law, parliamentary immunity shielded her from being arrested. Like legally, she could not be taken into custody unless caught in the act of committing a crime. Like, so if she got caught shooting her husband, like holding the gun and shooting him, then she could be arrested.
That's so corrupt. Like,
even if she was caught in the act of committing a crime, she could only be arrested if this was a non-bailable offense. So if it was like whatever the crime was, that's something that you can't get bail for, then they could arrest her if she's caught in the act. But if it was a bailable offense, like I don't know what would be, stealing a candy bar from the grocery store or whatever, I'm sure you can get bail for, then she still couldn't be arrested for that. Which I'm like, well, how the fuck? This is what is making me think there's some corruption going on, because
I hate that.
These are the people like making the laws too. Right. You know what I mean? So like the people who made this law about the people who make the laws not being allowed to be arrested, it's like it seems wrong. But again, I don't have all the context, so you guys let me know if there's a reason for this or there's something I'm missing here, but this seems very, very wrong. And I will say in this case in particular, it is wrong. Like she eventually gets what's coming to her, but for a while, like all of the kids are arrested, or like the 10 co-conspirators are taken into custody, and she's just out free. She had to wear like an ankle monitor, I believe, but she got to sleep in her own bed. She got to retain her seat in Congress and her salary and her status.
Was she going to like these Congress meetings with like an ankle monitor?
That's what I'm fucking saying. But she used this platform. Like that's the other thing is, she's not taken into custody, but she is still being charged with the crime and investigated. She's just not in jail while she's awaiting trial.
Okay.
But again, the fact that she got to keep her seat in Congress, and I mean, I guess it's innocent until proven guilty. I don't fucking know.
Right.
But it's wild. So she starts trying to basically like use her platform to prove her innocence before she even goes to trial. She's denying any involvement. She's doing like public appearances, and she's even emailing her fellow like Congress people in the days before the vote on her mandate removal. In the emails, she's pleading for, quote, a chance for me to defend myself from an unjust prosecution of my own husband's murder, a chance for my dignity to one day be reestablished, end quote. And
poor baby. Oh, it must be so hard for her.
It must be so hard. No dignity. I'm happy to report that she never got her dignity back. I'll tell you, yeah.
Good.
So in June of 2021, the Chamber's Ethics Council voted 16-1 to recommend revoking her mandate.
Can the Chamber's Ethics Council vote next to remove that law where they can't be?
I think that's a good idea. If we could vote on that.
Put it on their agenda.
Yeah. If any of our listeners in Brazil are listening, let us know if we can help you get that moving. So on August 11th, 2021, the full chamber voted to strip her of her seat. So 437 voted in favor of like removing her from her seat. 7 voted against it and 12 abstained from voting, which is interesting. Little bitches. But yeah, as the verdict was read, Flordelis just covered her face with her hand and she reportedly begged for mercy, saying, quote, "There's still time to do justice. Don't kill me," end quote. Which is weird because she doesn't get the death penalty or anything. I don't know why she says don't kill me, but yeah. So 2 days later on August 13th, 2021, because she's now no longer a congresswoman, now she's arrested and she's removed from her home and escorted to a patrol car while clutching her Bible in her hands.
Oh, I bet that was a great photo op for her. That's exactly what she wanted.
Literally, the next sentence is the camera's captured every second of it.
Yep.
Now,
called that one.
Dude, you are on it.
I listen to too much true crime, people, okay? I know.
I love it. You're like, this is me while I'm listening to like someone else's episode. Now, Flordelis was not the first member of the family to stand trial. The Brazilian justice system moved through the co-defendants in sequence, and by the time Flordelis herself faced a jury in November of 2022, the verdict landscape had already been shaped by what happened with her children's trials. So we're gonna jump a little bit back in time. So in November of 2021, Flavio dos Santos Rodrigues, who was the person who had actually fired the gun and killed Anderson, he was sentenced to 33 years, 2 months, and 20 days in a closed prison regime on charges of murder, illegal firearm possession, and the use of a forged document, as well as armed criminal association.
Do you know how they found out he was the one that fired the shot? Was it because the gun was in his room? Did he admit to it?
I think he admitted to it too. But the gun was found in his room, so I think that was initially what tipped them off. Then we've got the 18-year-old son that we talked about, Lucas Cesar dos Santos de Souza, the son who helped purchase the weapon, and he was convicted of murder and sentenced to 9 years. And I have to say,
9 years.
I love all these names. They're so beautiful and like long and like they have a melody to them. And white people in America need to get it together with names like this. Like Flavio dos Santos Rodrigues. I'm like, it has like a melody to it.
It is a lovely name.
It reminds me like Spanish names and Italian names. They just have this like rhythm to them that I fucking love. I love. You can catch my kids being named. They're gonna hate me when they're filling out like their standardized testing, like trying to write. There's
not gonna be enough bubbles or whatever.
When you have to fill the bubbles, they probably don't even do that anymore.
Yeah, that's actually scary. We should ask someone with kids around that age if they still do that.
One of my friends is a teacher, and he teaches 5th grade math, and he said that they take all their tests and do all of their homework online, like on the computer. They all have laptops, 5th graders, and so I don't know if. I can't imagine standardized testing, though. They're letting them do it on the computer. They're probably still filling in all the bubbles.
Filling in the bubbles.
Yeah. I remember my friends with long names would always just complain about, like, trying to fill in those bubbles. But yeah, okay, sorry. Back to the murder. So the son who had purchased the weapon, he was sentenced to 9 years. Then we've got Simone dos Santos Rodrigues, and she was the biological daughter.
She was the one that dated her stepdad. Okay.
Now,
as one does.
She received 31 years, 4 months, and 20 days for murder, attempted murder, and armed criminal association. And I believe that the attempted murder charges are in relation to the attempted poisonings. Yeah. But I couldn't find a source that stated that like explicitly. A 4th son, Carlos Uberachi Francisco da Silva, he was convicted of criminal association and sentenced to 2 years and several months, and then he was released on parole. 2 other children, Andre Luis de Oliveira and Marci, something with a T, da Silva, were acquitted. So not all of the people who were charged were convicted. The granddaughter that was charged, Ryan dos Santos Oliveira, she was also acquitted. Now, the trial of Flordelis began in November of 2022. And
it's crazy how recent this is.
Dude,
and I've never heard of it. Yeah.
When you hear this, like, oh, she had 55 children, she's a gospel singer,
I was thinking it's in like the 70s or something.
Exactly. Yeah. But the trial itself ran for 7 days, and Flordelis' defense rested on 2 pillars. The first was denial. She says, I had nothing to do with this. Wasn't me. Look over there. But she said she hadn't orchestrated the murder. She had not like financed the gun, and she had not coordinated any sort of cover-up. She said that she loved her husband and that the kids had done this to him on their own.
I love my son husband. I would never kill him.
I love my son husband. I love my son husband. Oh my God. Now, the second pillar was abuse. She told the court that Anderson had subjected her and other members of the family to sexual and physical violence, and that her children had done this to protect her from her husband, and that she didn't know anything about this. And so that's where it's like, again, she is painting this story of being not only innocent in this, but being the victim of this. And her children like valiantly saved her from this abuser. And again, while I personally find it believable that it's possible that Anderson was abusing people in this household, the idea that she was a victim of his is not very believable to me.
Yeah.
I feel as if she was a co-perpetrator. She didn't like other things he was doing in the house. That was probably the motive.
She wanted out. And yeah, this was her way of going about that.
Yes. But like the idea that she was like this, victim being abused by him, I just don't believe. She adopted this kid as a 14-year-old boy when she was in her early 30s and groomed him into a romantic and sexual relationship. I just do not believe that in the dynamic between the two of them that she was the victim of his.
Right.
I don't buy that personally. But does that mean he was not an abuser to the other? No, I don't think that means he was not an abuser. I just think she wasn't the victim here, personally. But yeah, so of course the court didn't believe any of this either, and they ruled that Flordelis was indeed the author of this crime. She was the leader, she was the cult leader, whatever you want to call her. She was the one who planned it, who funded it, who recruited the kids to execute it, and who choreographed this entire cover story. And the motive, as the court saw it, was not self-defense or the protection of her children. It was control. It was control over the money, it was control over the kids, and it was her desire to be free of this man who was challenging her absolute power in the home.
I do wonder how and why he became in charge of the finances. Like, at some point he wasn't, because he was a kid. Right. So, like, at some point he didn't have control over the finances. Like, it was a little at a time he started kind of being in control of them. Like, that's odd to me that she would let that happen. And maybe she was just so in love. She was, like, trying to look like a traditional couple where like the man does the finances or whatever. And but it's interesting to me that she let him take on that role.
And then it was to a point where she seemed like she couldn't take that control back.
Right.
And I wonder if it was like when she allowed that, he was so docile and obedient to her that she didn't see it as a possible issue. And then once he had control and he realized he had some sort of autonomy and power in the relationship, that then he started to, not be as obedient to her.
That would make sense.
Again,
yeah. But that was interesting to me.
I absolutely agree. So on November 13th, 2022, she is convicted of Anderson's murder with aggravating factors. So the cruelty of the killing, because again, he's shot 18 times in the groin. That it's a really crazy way to die. And it's like,
Wait, do we get to why the son shot him in the groin?
We don't know why the son shot him in the groin. I would imagine she told him to. But I don't know. Or
that's also
the other thing I could imagine is that if he was indeed sexually abusing these children,
that's what I was thinking.
That the son chose to shoot him in the groin because maybe he.
I can't imagine she would have told, like, that's stupid because then it looks like there's a motive that's not like robbery or random or whatever. Like that, that would be dumb. And anyway.
Yeah, we don't know. But I think those are two possibilities for sure. So what the court considered aggravating factors in the murder were the cruelty of it, the helplessness of the victim, and the calculated nature of the motive.
How long they were planning it, too.
Yes. And she was also convicted on the 6 prior poisoning attempts and some related lesser charges. Now, she was sentenced to 50 years and 28 days in prison. The most useful thing to understand about this case is that Flordelis was not simply a murderer who constructed this false life as a cover. She's not out here like Ted Bundy, like, I'm out here to hurt people and I'm going to do my best to seem normal. the life that she built was real to a certain extent. The children she adopted were real children with real needs who did receive real shelter and care. She just forgot to include the part where the abuse and the cult-like behavior came in when she told this story to everybody. And it does seem like early on in her life, the motive for her was to help these children.
Yeah.
Now, what the end goal was, the end goal of that to really help them or to be seen as the type of person who helps them, we don't really know.
Yeah.
But
I mean, that's a fine line even with anyone that like does good things and, you know.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But yeah, the music she sang moved real congregations, and the faith people placed in her was genuine on their end, even if on her end there were some ulterior motives. And I can only imagine what these people, you know, who were part of her congregation, I can't imagine how this like affected their faith and like how they practice and things like that. Because again, you know, some people point to her as being, you know, she's practicing like dark magic with these rituals and stuff. I think that's objective or no, subjective.
I don't know.
I
which
always
one's
get
right.
it mixed up. That's subjective, of course, from Eric. I already know Eric's going to be in the fucking script. It's subjective, dummy. Just kidding, Eric. I love your notes.
Eric, be nice.
No. He's always nice. But yeah, no, I think that's subjective. Like whether or not you think she was trying to practice dark magic or whether these were just like harmless rituals, whatever. I don't know. Do I think that she was actually practicing any sort of magic? No, but she might have thought she was. Now, what Flordelis understood too well and what really made her dangerous was the power of a story. In Brazil, in the evangelical community, in a media landscape hungry for redemption narratives about, you know, overcoming poverty and saving these children who were in danger, Flordelis had constructed something that was almost untouchable. She really was like the personification, like the living proof that faith could transform a life from its harshest and most brutal form into something heavenly. Like she had started out in the favelas in poverty, and she had, by helping others, by being selfless, by spreading the word of God, she had turned her life into one of fame and fortune and all of these great things, all by being selfless. Like that was the picture that she was painting. That was the narrative.
And like
it's compelling.
Right.
It's compelling. And it was something that protected her. And I think this is something that, you know, we see to this day with, you know, whether it be like famous people or whatever, that it's hard for you to believe that someone like this, someone who is seen as saintly, could do something so horrific. And I think we see it in other cases too, where like, you know, I don't know, man kills his wife and people are like, he would never hurt her.
He was such a nice guy.
He was such a nice guy. Yeah. You know, he rescued all these dogs. Like he would never hurt a fly type of thing. But yeah, that story she painted, it protected her for 2 years after she had shot her husband 18 times in their own driveway. It wasn't like she was not taken into custody for 2 years after the murder. Now, Anderson do Carmo was a man who controlled money and dispensed discipline in a household of 55 people, well, more than 55, and allegedly abused his own adopted children. But before he was that man, he was the 14-year-old boy that Flordelis took in as her son, and then eventually as her romantic and sexual partner. I would imagine this is like he was abused by her, too. So was this man a good man? Allegedly, it sounds like probably not. Was he also a victim at one point in his life? Yes. I would say at multiple points.
Yeah. Two things can be true at once.
Two things can be true at once. Now, Flordelis will be in her 90s when her sentence ends, if she lives that long. And I imagine that Bible that she clutched on the night that they took her away is her only companion in her cold, dark cell. Mic drop. Boom.
Love it.
Done. We did it. Crazy shit, right?
That's a wild episode.
That's a wild episode.
That's
like,
wild.
I
want to go Google like what she looks like and like where they like this, what this compound looked like. And
you have to watch the Amazon docuseries. Is fucking insane.
Yeah,
like,
I'll have to watch it.
It is.
Is it in Portuguese?
It's in Portuguese, so you have to like read all the subtitles. But like, it is worth the watch. Hold on, I'm gonna get the name of it. Oh fuck, Siri. God damn it. Oh, it's gonna piss me off. So the name of the docuseries is Flordelis, a family crime, a family crime. And then her name is spelled Flordelis. Delis. But apparently the S is silent. Or it's not, and I fucked up the whole episode, so sorry. But yeah, watch that docuseries, guys. It's fucking crazy. Like, and she's in it. Like, there's clips and stuff of her in it. It's really insane. But yeah, I think with that, court is adjourned for the day. Bye.
Bye.